And the economy looks very healthy. And according to federal data, 313,000 jobs were added last month. That's about 100,000 more jobs than economists expected. It's the most since July 2016. Now, President Trump wants this strong job growth to continue, and this is one of the reasons he says he's imposing new tariffs on steel and aluminum. But will his strategy actually work, or could it hurt the economy? For answers, let's turn to Peter Cardillo. He is Chief Market Economist at First Standard Financial. Welcome, Peter.
Good to be back.
So everyone was sort of surprised. Some people resigned over these tariffs. Is President Trump's apparently protectionist stance, we know it's a big departure, but how do you think it's going to be affecting the economy?
Well, it's too early to tell because, in effect, what we're seeing here is the president using tariffs as a bargain, let's say a bargain tool to obtain, obviously, a better NAFTA deal, and also to send a loud and clear message to China. Now, if the tariffs continue, and they should induce some sort of a trade war, then we could have a negative effect. And while it'll cure the problems for the steel and the aluminum industry, obviously it could boomerang and have a negative effect on the car industry, which is, the backbone of this country.
So you make a good point. I want to highlight that for a second. So obviously some steel workers could benefit based on what you're telling me, but the price of cars may actually increase.
Right, and you might actually lose jobs in the automobile industry. As I said, it's too early to tell. My guess is that probably this might induce both Mexico and Canada to make some concessions, and in fact they were exempt from the tariffs, and if that happens, then perhaps maybe we might see China take some steps and avoid a trade war, and that goes for the EU as well. And if a trade war can be avoided, guess what? At the end, Mr. Trump might come out smelling like a rose.
Might come out, though. You cautioned, might come out. Now, Senator Jeff Flake talks about the uncertainty that these tariffs could inject in the market. Obviously, you say it's too early to tell, but in terms of that uncertainty, investors don't like this uncertainty.
Uncertainties is the worst enemy for the stock market. And today we had a very, very strong stock market. Reason being is we had a terrific employment report. Why was it terrific? It was solid because there was no inflationary aspects attached to it. We saw wages still very much growing at a very moderate pace, not like last month when the market was spooked by the employment data. So today's employment data was very good. The question is, if you continue to grow and continue to stay in a very tight labor market situation, eventually you're going to have a scarcity of workers. That scarcity of workers means that the workers that are working are going to increase demands, are going to demand more pay, and that means an increase in wages. And that's when the market might begin to rethink what it was thinking today.
And that's because if people are making more money, they're bidding higher prices for items, so you could have some inflation.
I mean, if you go back, and I go back a long time, and go back in the late 60s when we had inflation take off due to shortages all over the place. At that time it was agricultural shortages, and it applies the same to the labor market. Once you create a shortage, right, and the demand remains strong,
prices have to go up. So President Trump says that trade wars are easy to win. Peter, you have more than a half-century of experience on Wall Street and finance. Based on your experience, what you know, is that true or is it false?
No, I think he hyped that. I don't think that's true. Trade wars are never easy to win. Again, you know, we're in a global economy, and that makes it even harder.
Let's look at the deficit. Ideally, in the president's view, these tariffs are going to help with the deficit. Do you think that's true? Is it possible? Any scenario where that actually makes sense?
Partially true and partially not true.
What does that mean?
Well,
It's half lie?
It simply means this. Look, you know, to have a big trade deficit means that you're trading, right? If you were to reduce that trade deficit, let's say by 60 or 70%, and you don't have any change in attitude from your trading partners, well, what are you doing? Nothing. You're creating less export activity, and that means less economic activity.
So in terms of these jobs, we saw 313,000 jobs. It's sort of a good sign. Is it sustainable, or do you think there's going to be a little bit of a pullback?
Do I think this can be sustainable on a monthly basis? No.
Yeah.
Look, I was looking for 180,000 new jobs being created, and so I was way off base, and so were the rest of the macro forecasters. This was a bit of a surprise, but again, I guess we should look back. Why did this happen? Because you had tax cuts. So corporations are out there hiring people, and we'll probably get a bump next month because the steel and aluminum industry are probably going to hire again.
Well, waiting to see what next month's hold. Thank you very much, Peter Cardillo.
My pleasure.
All right.